Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Tasha's Tales. Today I am joined by Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. So my name's Ronni and I've known Tasha for a long time in the blogging world. I live in the southwest of England with my husband and 5 children, and I've been blogging at Multicultural Motherhood for a long, long time. I think I checked recently, it was about 10 years ago that I started my blog. Actually, I don't so much blog these days. I'm more active now on Instagram. I would say that's my main social media outlet. I just absolutely love Instagram. And I have a podcast as well, which I haven't done any episodes for about a year since I had my fifth child a year ago, but it's called Wonder and Learn Podcast, and it's all about education and child development, because these are two things that are really important to me, because I'm a speech and language therapist and I work with children, quite a lot of children with language delay, autism, and also bilingual families. I love to support bilingual families to help raise their children bilingual. And we are a bilingual family ourselves. Husband's from Turkey, so he speaks Turkish to the kids some of the time, not as much as I would like him to. And then obviously we speak English as well, living in England. And I actually home educate some of my children. So I talk a lot on my social media and podcast all about homeschooling as well.
And do you know, I was looking back at our messages and I've been following you since 2017.
Wow, long
As,
time.
yes,
Yeah.
7 years, so over
I
seven
didn't even know I'd been on
years.
Instagram that long.
Yeah, 7 years. Because it's been a long time since I've been following you, and I've been in awe of how you juggle everything. And obviously, I've been in awe from a distance. So I was really, really eager to have you on the podcast and just catch up and basically tell you you're amazing, you're
Oh,
fantastic. I
thank you.
find your posts and everything so inspirational. It's nice and refreshing to see a mum out there being really real about everything. And there's so many aspects to your life that I find fascinating, from your profession to your choice to home educate, to having a larger family, five children. So, where should we start from? Should we start from being from an interracial couple and, having children who are dual heritage? What's it like in terms of your lived experiences?
Yeah, so I call myself multicultural motherhood because I am from a very multicultural family. So although I grew up in England, my grandparents were actually from Poland. So my parents are both Polish. So and the thing is, I wasn't raised speaking Polish, and this is something that I think has kind of led me to the point I am today of really trying to promote bilingualism, because as a child, as a monolingual child from a bilingual family, I just found it really, really difficult not to be able to speak the other language. Like we'd go to family gatherings, and obviously me and my siblings were just left out. And now that there's so many Polish people living in the UK, I just think, wow, what an asset it would have been if I had actually spoke Polish and I could communicate with all these people and support them. So I kind of feel really sad about the fact that I wasn't raised bilingual, which is why I really try to promote bilingualism now with other families and within my own family myself. So yeah, and it's not easy, is it, being in an interracial marriage, multicultural marriage? I mean, my husband's from Turkey. He's actually Kurdish, which I think is an important difference to make, because there's a lot of cultural differences actually between the Turks and the Kurds as well. My husband was raised actually speaking, well, one of his first language is actually a language called Zazaki, which is a Kurdish language, and he speaks two Kurdish languages and Turkish while he was growing up. So he was raised trilingual. And then when he came to the UK, or maybe a little bit before, because he kind of worked within tourism before he came to the UK, he learned English as well. So he speaks four languages now, which I just think is amazing. I speak quite a lot of Turkish now, so I feel
Oh,
like
wow, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So I feel better that I've become bilingual as an adult.
Yeah, because it's
Um,
so much harder to pick up a language as an adult.
Well, there's a bit of misconception about this actually,
Okay.
because the thing is, although everyone thinks, oh, children learn languages really easy, they like soak them up like a sponge. The problem is with children is they take a long, long time to acquire grammar and concepts. Okay. So whereas, children whose first language is English, they're still learning like how to form the past tense, like an irregular past tense when they're like 8 years old. So you think, wow, from birth to 8 years, that's a long time. Whereas adults, because we know about all of these concepts, we can understand about, the time concepts and past and present and future. I could like learn that tomorrow. I could just pick up a book and learn it, right? So it's not really always the case that children learn it easier than adults. I think, some people in general just find languages easier. And if you've been raised bilingual, they do say it's much easier as an adult for you to learn additional languages. But it's not necessarily the case that adults find it difficult in general. Like I said, they find the grammatical aspects of learning a language much, much easier, actually. The main difference, I would say, with learning a language very early on in childhood and learning a language as an adult is the pronunciation, actually, because I
Okay.
think once you've learned, your own language, pronunciation, it's very difficult as an adult to learn some of those sounds that you're not used to, something that's not from your native language. Whereas children find it very, very easy to pick up the sounds.
Yeah, and I guess we've got so much access to learn now. I know there's loads of apps to enable people to learn different languages and things. With regards to teaching your children an additional language, how do you incorporate that day-to-day life?
Oh, it's very difficult, I must say. It really depends on the people who speak the languages. I mean, although I speak Turkish, I'm not perfect. English is by far my main and most prominent language. So I choose to speak English the majority of the time with my children. And it's very much because you speak your kind of first language or your dominant language much, much better. Like if I tried to talk Turkish all of the time to my children, I know that they're not going to be getting like a wide range of vocabulary. I might make some grammatical errors and things like that. Whereas if I speak English, obviously they're not going to get any of those errors. So they're going to get a much richer input from me if I speak English. So it's really up to my husband to, you know, teach them the language. So I find that they actually learn most when we actually go over to Turkey and visit his family. That is amazing. Like literally, you think, oh, my kids haven't spoken Turkish for a few months. They go to Turkey. After a week there, they're speaking Turkish to their cousins. And it's literally just amazes me because I'm like, oh my God, how is this happening? But I think because there's no one over there that really speaks English, they're just kind of forced into that situation where they either talk Turkish or they don't communicate with their cousins. So it really just pushes them to try it, really. And it's surprising how quickly they can pick it up.
I must say that as I'm getting older, so I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I myself can speak 3 languages. So I can speak English, Urdu, and Patwari. And I feel a little bit disappointed with myself and my husband because we're both fluent in all 3 languages, yet we don't speak to our children in anything but English. So this conversation is a reminder to myself before anyone else that I need to start speaking to them in Urdu or Patwari so we don't lose that language. And I don't want them to grow up and resent their parents for not teaching them because I can imagine from speaking to you, I kind of get that, oh, wish you had taught me.
Exactly, because it just would have been so beneficial to me throughout my life, wouldn't it, to be able to speak Polish, especially if your kids have a foreign name. I would say it's even more important because, people are going to look at their name and think, oh, they must speak whatever. Like my sister, for example, she's got like the most Polish name out there. And because she works for a global company where they do have offices and factories in Poland, Polish people will be emailing her in Polish because they just assume that she speaks Polish because she's got a Polish name, right? And then she has to email back and saying, sorry, don't understand what you're saying. I only speak English. And it's kind of embarrassing for her, actually, I think, and frustrating, to be in that position where people assume you to be a certain way and you're not.
Yeah, interestingly enough, my cousin who works as a doctor at a hospital, they had a patient who spoke in Gujarati and she was trying to explain something and he said, oh, I know there's a junior doctor in a different department, they're Gujarati, so maybe they can come and help. And actually, when they approached this female whose heritage, ethnicity, it was Gujarati, she actually couldn't speak or understand the language. And that was the first time I thought, oh gosh, I hadn't even thought about that aspect of the fact that my children do have a different name and they don't even have a basic understanding. So it's hard. It's really hard when you don't have any extended family around the children to speak another language because that pressure's on you on a day-to-day basis to kind of ensure that you're speaking to them in a different language.
Yeah, definitely. But it's just so important and people don't really realize it. There is a lot of pressure on you when you're like that sole person who's going to be like passing on that language. But just think if you don't pass it on, what are the negatives? What are the disadvantages? They won't be able to speak to extended family. When you travel abroad, they're not going to be able to understand anyone. People are going to look at them like, what's wrong with you? You've got this name and you can't speak it. Or, why didn't your parent, like even you as a mum, people are probably going to be asking you questions actually, like your parents or whatever. Why have you not taught my grandchild this language?
I must
So yeah.
admit, when my 2-year-old went to the childminder was quite keen and enthusiastic to teach my daughter Urdu. And hats off to her, she taught her the first 5 numbers in Urdu. So my daughter
Oh,
knows that through the childminder. So that's
that's
really,
nice.
really nice. In
Yeah.
respect of home education, then, is that the correct terminology? Correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong,
Yeah.
because I'm not an expert. So, what made you choose to go down that route with your children?
Yeah, so that's quite an interesting story as well because I had never planned to home educate when I was growing up. It's not something that really crosses my radar. I just knew nothing about it. And even when I had my first child, I wasn't thinking about home educating. But what happened was when my second child was born, a couple of months after that, we actually moved to Germany for a while because I've got some brother-in-laws over there. So we went to Germany, and while we were there, my eldest child turned 3. So I thought, oh, okay, this is the age where they should attend preschool, kindergarten. So I tried to apply for the local kindergarten, and they said the waiting list is 500 kids long. And I was like, what? She's never going to get a place at kindergarten then, is she? Because obviously people must put their names down at birth or something in this little village where we were living. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because in Germany, they actually start school much later. And same in a lot of European countries, they start school at 6 or 7 over there. I thought, God, what am I going to do until she's 6 years old, at home? Like, surely kids have got to learn something before they're 6. Because I was very like naive. I didn't know anything about, how children actually learn, like anything at that point. I just thought, oh, you send your children to school and the children learn. So I thought, well, I'll look into homeschooling because then at least I can, teach her some things before she starts school at the age of 6. And as soon as I read my first book on homeschooling, I was just completely hooked. And I was like, that is it. It's so much better than school. I'm never sending my kids to school. So
What
yeah,
was the
that was it
book?
really. It
Do you
was called,
remember?
yeah, it was, I can't remember the author, but it was called You Can Do It Too. And it was basically a collection of interviews with 25 homeschool families just about how they homeschool. So it was just interviews basically. And it obviously, because there's a variety of different families, variety of different like family sizes, number of children, different methodologies that they follow. So yeah, it was really, really interesting. And I think because it was such a wide variety, I thought, wow, anyone could do this really then, can't they? So it was like really positive and it sounded like really easy, really fun. It just sounded idyllic, I guess.
Yeah.
So then, because we were living in Germany, homeschooling is actually illegal over in Germany, right? You're
Oh,
not allowed to
wow.
homeschool. Yeah,
Okay, interesting.
there are some countries around the world where it is illegal. And I think with the case of Germany, for example, it stems back to Hitler's time because he obviously wanted everyone to go to school so that he could brainwash them all into the same way of thinking. So he made homeschooling illegal then, and it's just continued to be illegal. And in Turkey now it's illegal as well. So that's another country which you cannot actually homeschool. Though I do have a friend who lives there, but she's an expat. And I think if you're an expat or, you're a part of the military, you have sort of some leeway in that. But the general population of Turkey just are not able to home educate their children. So yeah, very, very interesting. So yeah, we just thought, well, if we want to homeschool, if we stay in Germany, we cannot homeschool. So that's one of the reasons we then decided to come back to the UK.
And now, how many years has it been since you've been homeschooling?
So about 11 years since
Wow.
I first read that book. Yeah.
And what have been the biggest challenges, would you say, with homeschooling?
I think the challenges are, well, firstly, socializing. And I know there's like a really big debate about, everyone thinks, oh, homeschool kids can't socialize. But it's not really that. I think there's a couple of things with socialization homeschooling. The first thing is it really depends on the families that are around you that are homeschooling. Are there some like-minded families living where you live who regularly want to meet up and do things? Now, there are absolutely loads. Like I live in Bristol, so there's absolutely loads of homeschoolers. There's loads of homeschool groups. Like you could have your days filled Monday to Friday going from homeschool group to homeschool group. But the problem is sometimes there's not the regular, like people don't attend regularly. So the children aren't seeing the same children all of the time, and then they don't build up the friendships. And the other problem is, when you've got a large family like I have with 5 children, it's finding groups where you can go to and each of the children has got something from it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
Because, I could go
absolutely.
to a group for my 11-year-old or 12-year-old, but, my younger ones wouldn't get anything out of it. So it can be tricky in that way, when you've got a larger family to find other similar families and to find things that you can go to and enjoy together as a family. The second thing is, which is quite an interesting thing, is there are a lot of neurodivergent kids who are homeschooled. And it's not so much that homeschooled kids don't know how to socialize. It's just a fact that there are a lot of neurodivergent kids homeschooled. And with neurodivergent kids, like children who are autistic, they just find social skills difficult in general. So it's not because they're homeschooled that they're finding it difficult. It's because of the neurodivergency that they're finding it difficult. So I think that can really skew people's ideas of homeschooling if they happen to come across a group of homeschoolers where there are a lot of children with autism as part of that. Yeah.
With homeschooling, I was thinking about this before I spoke to you. How, what's kind of the procedure and the legality around it? Do you have to register as someone who's homeschooling their children? Is that how it works? And then from there, is there any kind of check-ins, annual like welfare check-ins or anything like that?
So we're really lucky in the UK where we are just able to homeschool exactly how we want to, home educate. Home education is normally the term that we use in the UK, whereas I think homeschooling is most widely used in America. And it's important to make the distinction really because homeschooling is school replicated at home. So, kids sitting down at a desk and doing worksheets and that kind of thing. Whereas home education is a lot more broad and there's lots of different ways that you can do it. And it's not necessarily about, replicating school at home. In fact, most of us don't replicate school at home. That's one thing that we try not to do. But we're really lucky in the UK because we are able to homeschool or home educate how we want. So we don't have to follow any curriculum. We don't have to do certain hours or times or check in with anyone. But if we are known to the local education authority, we do have to send a report every year just saying, what kind of things we've been getting up to, what progress our children have made and things like that. But it's very easy. I just normally send an email once a year and just say, this is the subjects we've been covering and this is what we've been doing. And, I've noticed this progress in my children is not difficult to do. But there are families who, and I think I'm known to the local authority because my eldest daughter is in school now. But there are families whose children have never been to school that are not known to the local authority, so they don't have to actually do this. So yeah, it's a bit of it can be an issue for some people, and the government are always talking about trying to bring in a home education register so that they know who's homeschooling and who's not, but it hasn't happened yet. We don't have a homeschool register and yeah, we're just left to it basically.
I'm just thinking in terms of safeguarding where that fits in, because obviously a lot of the time it's when children are in school, when things are picked up and noticed in terms of whether there's any safeguarding issues. And I was just wondering how that kind of would fit in, but I guess people would still access health and other universal services, wouldn't they?
I think the thing is, I think children who are like neglecting their kids or abusing their kids, they're not really the kind of people that want to home educate. They're not really thinking about their children's education, are they? They probably want their children shipped off to school because, they don't want to be taking care of them. Whereas you find that families who home educate, they're really thinking about their children
I
24/7.
mean, I
Do you
said
know
it
what I
at the
mean?
beginning. I think anyone who home educates is admirable because you are investing your sweat, blood, and tears on a daily basis, basically, I can imagine. Because, like I said, being a mum of two is hard work anyway. I mean, it's school holidays, and I feel like it's a bit of a shock to the system. But that's life for you at all times, isn't it? You don't really get
Absolutely.
that break. So yeah, absolutely respect you for that. I have a couple of friends who at some points have done like a year of home education or homeschooling. So how do you plan your day-to-day activities? Do you pre-plan your weeks and days or do you go with the flow?
Yeah. So we follow a method of homeschooling developed by a lady called Charlotte Mason, and she was an educator in the Victorian times, actually, and she actually set up a school. But because there were a lot of people homeschooling at that time, she wrote books on home education as well for parents who were homeschooling their kids. And she basically said that children should be spending a lot of time outdoors, that you should have short lessons and you should spend a lot of time in nature and you should be doing things that kind of inspire your children. You should make your children interested in learning. And she talked about home educating and helping your children learn through a way called narration. And now narration is quite interesting because it's all about having discussions. So we will kind of read an extract from a book and then say to my kids, oh, can you tell me what happened? Or what did you think about this? What did you think about that? And that's their kind of way of learning. So I don't ever ask them like comprehension questions like you would in English at school. They don't have to read an article and then I ask them specific questions that are looking for a specific answer. I'm kind of wanting them to tell me what they got out of it and, what stood out to them, what impact it's had on them, what they took from it. So this is the kind of way we do it. But because there's very short lesson, it's brilliant because, I'll just say, handwriting, for example, 5 minutes a day. That's it, and if they can only do when they're young, one word, that's fine. If they could do a whole sentence, that's fine. If they could do a whole poem, that's fine. It's keeping it short so children don't get bored and so it's not too tiring, because I think sometimes lessons at school they can be a bit too long,
Ronnie,
and the
that
children are
is the
just
most
not bored.
refreshing thing I've heard in a long time. Because children's brains, I sometimes look at my 5-year-olds and I think, gosh, like your brain is developing in so many different ways, and there's so much pressure to do, do, do. It's, I guess when you're home educating, I, I guess the setup suited to the child's individual needs rather than just expecting every single child to behave in a certain way and respond in a certain way and abide to the rules. I think that sense of individuality is taken
Mhm.
away.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love best about homeschooling. We can cater to our children's needs. We can go faster if they're more able. We can go slower if they're less, cognitively ready. So it's just really, really good because you're just tailoring your kids' education to how their brains are working at the time, what they're interested in. And that's one of the things I love about it because I will regularly say to my children, what would you like to learn about at the moment? And then we'll kind of do a little project about that rather than saying, oh, this is part of the curriculum and this is part of the curriculum. We've got to tick all these boxes. I just let them take the lead. We've done some really interesting things based on my children's interests. Like once we did a project all about Venus flytraps because
Oh,
my son
wow.
suddenly got interested in that. Yeah, and we went to the garden centre and we brought a Venus flytrap. We came back, we learned how to look after it, and then we got learning about all the other killer plants out there because it's not just Venus flytraps, believe it or not. There are other plants that eat animals as well. So that was absolutely fascinating. We've done sea creatures about 3 or 4 times because my kids just absolutely love sea creatures, and my 12-year-old now is thinking about taking his marine science GCSE because, he's just been allowed to develop that love for things in the sea. So that's really, really nice to see. see as
That's
well. Because,
beautiful.
yeah. So it's fascinating and really, really interesting. And I just love seeing what they want to learn about next and just facilitating that for them.
Do you feel like you're relearning so much yourself as well? So it's like a
Oh,
growth and a
yeah.
journey for you as well, because I wouldn't think about learning about plants or sea creatures at 35. It's just not something that would cross my mind, but I
Well,
guess,
this is the thing. You don't
yeah.
need to know about the subject in order to teach it, you know? That's the beauty of it. You know, you see what your kids are interested in and then you just learn about it together, you know? So I just learn alongside them.
What part does your husband play in this then? Because, of course, being able to home educate means that you and your partner need to be on the same page because, it needs to work. You need to work as a team, I guess, to make it work. So how do you juggle that?
Well, he leaves most of the homeschooling down to me. His only job is to teach the children Turkish. So that's his only job in the education part. So basically, I'm with the kids most of the time because he's at work. I actually work on a Monday, so that's his day with the kids. So he's basically allowed to do what he wants. If he wants to teach them something, he can, but the only thing I say to him is please just teach them Turkish. That's it. I don't care if you don't teach them anything else, just teach them Turkish.
Which again is so, so important, isn't it? In terms
Absolutely.
of growth, but also something about heritage and ethnicity and sense of belonging as well. It's a huge part of your identity, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that kids are missing out when they go to school. Just think like they're in school 30 hours a week. That's 30 hours they're not going to be hearing their home language. Do you know what I mean? So that's one way that it's great to home educate as a bilingual family because you can put so much emphasis on the home language and learning that and incorporating the culture into your lives, which I think is really important.
How do you look after your self-care then? Because, if you are home educating, which I can imagine, you have to think about cooking, cleaning, teaching the children, being a part of their learning journey. But having five children, mashallah, how do you juggle time for you?
Well, obviously, I don't get much time to myself, especially because I've got a 15-month-old at the moment. So, even in the evenings, they're kind of spent kind of breastfeeding her and trying to get her to sleep. So it's difficult at the moment. But I think you just have to remember that these things come in seasons. You're going to have a more intense season of motherhood when you've got babies and toddlers, and once they get older, it is just going to be a little bit easier. So I'm kind of I do, once she's in bed, I will stay up for an extra hour or two because I need that time, to myself to chill out in front of the TV or to read a book or do my knitting. I do quite like to do knitting. That's kind of one way that I do like to relax. And I try to make sure that I can do stuff that really, fills my cup up. So I really like doing book clubs. I attend a couple of book clubs, and that's kind of one way that I do get out in the evening and do something on my own away from the kids. Another thing that I find absolutely brilliant is attending conferences because I love to continue learning. So I will go like once a year to a homeschool conference and I will leave the kids at home. I might go away for the whole weekend, and that's just a great way to chill out and also just be around like-minded people. And I find that an amazing experience. So yeah, it's really important to make that time for yourself and to really get your spouse on board with that because, my husband then has to look after the kids for the whole weekend by himself, and I think it's important that our spouses allow us that time, especially when we're so full on with the homeschooling and working and everything else. We do need that time. And it is just a lovely thing to get away for a couple of days and, recharge.
Oh, that's really nice. And did you say you work on Mondays as well?
Yes, I work on Mondays. At the moment, I work at a local school on a Monday as their speech and language therapist.
Oh,
So
that's
that's my
really
time.
lovely.
It's
So you can
lovely because
tap
it's very,
into your career and your profession that you've
exactly,
worked so hard towards.
yeah, which is really important to me because I just love supporting the children and helping them to get the the language and the support that they need. And it's something it's just really important to me. I wouldn't like to be someone who, wasn't able to work because I know that I have the skills to support a lot of children. So I just want to do that really and use my skills where it's needed.
from my own experience, the referrals for speech and language are absolutely massive. I think our local one, there's a waiting list of 6 months. So I think what you do is quite niche and quite special. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
nice
I
that you
mean,
tap into that.
yeah, if you look at these statistics, I think it's about 70,000 kids now on the waiting list in the UK or just in England. I'm not even sure. So it's absolutely massive. And, I think about 5,000 kids are waiting over a year for their initial appointment, which is just really, really sad. So I do work privately as well because there's a lot of children who need the support that just aren't getting the support that they need. So I work privately as well, both online and face to face.
Okay, that's amazing. Is there any quick tips that you could give someone for Salt? Any parents who are struggling, any quick tips that you could maybe signpost them to the right place or anything?
Yeah, so it's really important to get referrals in as soon as possible. At the age of 2, you will get a visit from the health visitor to do the 2-year check. And if you've got any concerns, I would definitely raise that with the health visitor and ask for a referral. I think what it's really important to understand is bilingualism does not cause a language delay. So if you have health visitors and health professionals or even nursery workers, teachers saying to you, oh, your child is delayed because they're bilingual, we're not going to refer them for another 6 months or a year, which does often happen, I would say absolutely put your foot down and say, no, I want a referral now. Because, at the age of 2, children should actually saying between 50 and 300 words and be putting 2 words together. So if your child is not doing that, they need to be referred no matter how many languages they speak. They definitely need to be referred at the same time. I think it's really, really bad that bilingual children are often missing out just because of the lack of awareness of the health professionals and the educators.
I'm so glad I asked you the question because up until our conversation, I believe that being bilingual means that it delays speech and language.
No, absolutely not. If you look at the world population, right, about 2/3 of the population are being raised bilingual or trilingual, whatever, more than 2 or more languages. Okay. So actually, in England, we have something quite unusual where so many people are being raised with only one language. And I think, if you just look at the whole population of the world and think, well, most people are being raised with 2 or more languages is not causing them any problems, right? So why do we think in this country that learning 2 languages is confusing for children and is going to cause a delay? It absolutely doesn't. The human mind has the capacity to learn multiple languages without any difficulty. So we really just need to raise awareness and make people understand that it's an asset. There's so many benefits to it, social benefits, cognitive benefits. We should be promoting it. We should be supporting families to be able to do it. And we should definitely be raising awareness among the health profession and also, the educators, schools and nurseries, and make them understand that this is really not a problem. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not going to delay children and families need to be supported.
And as an adult, it's still not too late for you to pick up another language. Got
Exactly.
you. Also, quickly, with regards to if someone's contemplating starting their home education journey, is there anywhere that you would signpost them? Anywhere that you would say, right, that's the direction you need to head into to kind of gauge some confidence?
Yeah, so what you need to do is you need to go on Facebook and find your local homeschool, home education Facebook groups, because in my experience, everything is advertised in terms of like what's going on in the community, park meetups, homeschool groups, workshops. It's all in Facebook groups. So you really need to just go on Facebook, search for your local community. Like in my community, for example, we have Bristol Home Education Facebook group, and everything is just posted there. And, you can also ask questions there. I'm a new homeschool family, or I'm thinking about homeschooling. Can anyone tell me a bit about what it's like in this area? Or does anybody want to meet up and we can discuss things? So yeah, that is really the best thing to do.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and energy to come on because I know it must be really hard to juggle everything and making time for me. I really appreciate it. I will link all your details in the episode description and I look forward to hearing your podcast. I've listened to a few of them, but I need to catch up on the
I know. I
remaining
also
two.
need to start making more episodes, to be honest, because I've got a bit relaxed since my baby was born last year.
But it feels like a breath of fresh air just speaking to you, just normalizing things like home education and promoting other languages to be spoken in the house. So I think, yeah, it's really, really nice. I think you are extremely inspirational and just, yeah, I'm just so glad I've been following you for all these years and watching your growth and your journey. It's been really,
Well,
really
thanks for
lovely.
inviting me. It was lovely to speak to you, and thanks for asking the questions.
Yeah, no, anytime. Is there anything else you would like to say before we part?
Just if anybody wants any speech and language advice, then I'm always happy to chat, or any advice about homeschooling, just send me a message on Instagram is probably the easiest way because I'm most active on there. So yeah, just follow me on Instagram and send me some messages and I'll point you in the right direction.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, Ronnie. Really, really appreciate your time, and I look forward to catching up and seeing all your reels and stories.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.